Welcome to Highlight Reel, a series of videos where I summarise what it was like to play through and finish a particular game. This isn't really a review, but more about the experience of the playthrough itself. So let's kick it off. I recall seeing Sonic games on the Master System, but I always assumed they were a bit lame on the less capable 8-bit console. This assumption is basically wrong. Looking back over the reviews, people seem to generally like this port back in the day, so I went into this playthrough hoping it would be somewhat fun. But it turns out that might be a huge understatement. You start the game, and where else but Greenhill Zone, of course. I love this level because it's always quite familiar in what it's trying to achieve. It seeks to introduce you to the game's hazards, but it doesn't punish you too much. It's always a good mix of gotta go fast and stop-start action. Here I was playing it cautious to try and grab those 50 rings so I could be teleported for a special stage with a chance of the Chaos Emerald. The enemies here are ported from the Mega Drive version, but they seem a little more cutesy somehow. The music in this level is the familiar Sonic Stage 1 theme, but it sounds just glorious in 8-bit, and somehow matches the feel of the rest of the game nicely. In terms of player control, it's very close to what Sonic should feel like, but it almost feels a tad faster than the 16-bit version. Perhaps that's just me. Here in this special stage, I was trying to get a hold of continues rather than aiming for 100 rings, which gives you an extra life. It's better to go for the continues because of course, you start a continue with multiple lives, so it makes total sense to make them your focus. The Greenhill boss is probably a bit underdone, but these spikes sure weren't. But hey, this might just be the easiest boss in Sonic history. I suppose it works as an introduction for some of Robotnik's sneaky tricks. You just need to hit him from below and jump over him when he comes down to the ground. Before you know it, you're freeing bunnies and flickies from Robotnik's techno prison. I really love the music in Bridge Zone. It's one of the standout music tracks in this game, I reckon. Chaos Emerald here is pretty easy to grab. This act is also really short. In Act 2, you're introduced to an endless scroll level, which isn't a normal mechanic in the Sonic games, but it's actually kind of cool here. It's a different type of challenge which keeps things fresh. You do have to work on your timing here though, because there's a bridge that falls, and if you get ahead of yourself, it will fall, and you'll have no screen to jump to. The Bridge Zone boss here is reminiscent of a few of the Mega Drive version bosses. It's a bit more difficult than the first, the only real issue being how greedy you want to get with repeat attacks. You can definitely take it slow here if you're not confident, but I raced ahead. Next up was Jungle Zone, which is quite an innovative Sonic level. Its design actually reminds me of a level in Sonic 3, but it's got a subtle level of difficulty to it. There's a nice mix of stop-starting here. This scene here where you have to land on moving logs, and if you get it wrong you fall to your death. It's quite intense at times. But oh man, in Act 2 you're in for a bad time if you're not careful. This section where you need to climb straight up for a really tall ending platform can be quite frustrating. The reason is the screen scrolls up with you, and if you actually fall past the bottom, you actually die straight away, rather than landing on solid ground as you'd expect. It's a unique test of skill. The boss in Jungle Zone has a subtle kind of difficulty, especially comparing it to the first two bosses. You really need to get your timing right, and also be careful of the angle of the vines on the edges, which can propel you into Robotnik when you don't mean to. Everyone's favourite Sonic level is a water level, right? Wrong. Water levels in Sonic have always made me really uneasy, and this one is no different. The mix of spikes and slow motion jumps underwater, all set to a timer of potentially running out of air, is a unique kind of hard. Mix the slow motion jumping in with genuine uncertainty of where you need to go, and these levels definitely get the heart rate up. I think the boss in Labyrinth Zone may be the most difficult in this game. Robotnik comes from 3 different sides, launches these little heat-seeking missiles at you, as well as mixing it up with some lobbed bullets. Couple all this with the slow motion aspect of being underwater, not to mention the quite large gap to jump over. I actually missed this jump a bunch of times in previous runs of this level. It's also kind of hard to attack Robotnik when he's in a lower middle position. I actually just chose to avoid it completely because if you jump too late he'll dive down and you'll fall to your death. This boss is definitely a lesson in patience. I think Scrap Brain Zone may actually be the easiest level to get lost on in any Sonic game ever. The mix of having to head in a non-standard direction and then play some guesswork on which trigger opens which door adds yet another layer to this game. I've got to say, at this point, I think this is a genuinely great Sonic title. It's thrown so many different challenges at me at this point. Just when I thought I'd figured things out, there was a little pig guy who I kinda didn't want to destroy. This fire? Less so. You eventually get to the end and you don't actually have a boss fight. Instead you make Robotnik run for his life.
Don't make me run! I'm full of chocolate!
Skybase Zone reminds me of the Quackshot level, the one on electric poles. Again, a unique mix of stop-start and timing jumps between electricity zapping you and angled guns firing at you. There's also the added difficulty of having to make jumps into the unknown. It's a real hair raiser, and somehow after the prior levels it stands out as pretty unique. In Skybase Act 2, I had a really hard time. I was fine with the clockwise turning guns, but these little exploding guys was another story. I went from having 9 lives and multiple continues and being quite confident I'd finish this game quite easily. But again and again and again and again, I struggled to get past these guys. The intensity of running into the unknown with no rings really puts you on edge. It's a fine level indeed, and a fitting end level to this game. Fighting Robotnik for the final time had some super close moments. I was really trying to count my hits and get the timing spot on. Once you get it, it becomes easy, but man, coming across this for the first time under pressure was a tall order. I eventually hit my first continue and really started sweating on whether this was doable this run. But in the end, I got there. Overall in this playthrough, I expected this to be a budget cut-down version of the 16-bit Mega Drive/Genesis game, but it turned out not to be the case. Its level design, pacing and music choice makes it a game that can stand on its own. It's definitely a game from scratch rather than a crappy port. The parts I enjoyed the most were definitely the great music, Bridge Zone in particular. This makes sense as the game was actually designed by a music composer turned producer. The other aspect was the subtle genius behind how the levels challenge you in different ways, like speed, memory, agility, reaction, and so on. Playing as Sonic in this title feels right, even though it seems the acceleration is a little quicker than the 16-bit title, it still works. There weren't a whole lot of issues for me with this game. I did have a little whinge about some of the buggy areas in Jungle Zone, but honestly, it added to the difficulty, which was probably needed, even though it probably wasn't intended. Overall, I'm super impressed with this game. I was expecting it to be kind of lame compared to the Mega Drive version, but it definitely stands on its own, and it's a must-play for Sega Master System owners. Check this title out, and thanks for watching guys. Catch us next time.